Hi everyone, I'm Leo from Stagedge, and I'm here today with Mike and Melissa from our solutions team. Hey guys.
Hey Leo, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Great.
Good.
So today we're going to talk about user experience and interactivity as it relates to virtual events, hybrid events, and even live events, right? So just to take a quick step back at, where we've come and now where we are, I think it's pretty safe to say that no live event at this point is not going to have some sort of online element, right?
Yeah.
It's been pretty heavily, if not completely, focused on the online experience. As we start to open up and maybe go back to live events or hybrid events, there's still going to be that demand for a online space for part or all of your audience to go to, right? So really what question that poses is, well, what is the user experience, or UX as we're going to probably refer to it as for the rest of this, and also what are the kind of interactive elements that we can incorporate into that online experience. So just to start off here, when we talk about user experience and interactivity, what are some of the key elements that you think clients should consider, or what are the high level kind of initial thoughts to look at, and what should a client expect in terms of user activity? We'll start with Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Leo. No, the most important thing is really to go back to the beginning of why we're here. Why are we trying to have an event? What's important to the stakeholders who are asking you to put the event on? Who's the audience? What's the message or story we're trying to tell? And really getting to the root at that first, and then deciding on, hey, what makes the most sense for that user journey now that we know the goals? So we always start with those types of questions to get a real understanding of what's driving the request to have an event. And then from there we talk about, hey, how are we going to engage the invitees for this? What's the registration process? Those things are so critical early on to make sure that we understand and give that user a great path to get to the event, understand what's coming for the event, and the communication around that. So that's where we like to start.
Yeah, perfect. And it's funny because you mentioned registration, and I think that's a pretty unique element when we're kind of merging the worlds of web development, user experience design, and events. And oftentimes registration, that idea, kind of comes a little later than it should in the conversation, right? So I guess, Melissa, what are your thoughts? Let's start there at the beginning of the audience journey, right? How important is it to kind of have your registration goal set from both a user experience and a tech perspective?
Absolutely. From the tech perspective, you have to think about what platform you're then going to be using for the rest of the event. So if you're setting up registration on one platform and you decide to use a different one, it's another step of integrating that registration in. So it really is your first step that you want to be thinking of when planning an event. From the client perspective, the registration needs to be as easy as possible for them to be able to get from point A to point B, and then as the event comes up, they need to be able to have that great user journey to just click on one button and be able to get to that event. Just this morning, there was an event that I tried to get onto, and as someone in the tech world, I wasn't able to find an easy way. I had to go through multiple steps to re-register to get onto that event to take part in it.
Yeah, and Mike, you mentioned something earlier when we were talking that was interesting, where I think it's safe to say that this is evolving as we go, right? I don't think there's any illusion that all of this technology, all this interactivity, as it's specifically pertained to a live event, really existed in its current state 18 months ago, right? So, talk a little bit about kind of the evolutions that we've seen. You've been, deep into this for quite some time, from where we started and kind of where we're at now and where we think we're going.
Yeah, absolutely. No, the biggest thing that everybody's been really navigating is the platform world. So there's so many platforms. And every call we get on, we hear about a new platform or a new technology or something that's great within this platform, but not everything seems to have all the flexibility that our clients want. So that's been a real struggle, right? Is trying to say, all right, well, let's pull this element out of here, pull this element out of here. And it's really driven our team to be platform agnostic, where, hey, if you come to us with a platform you like, we're going to learn it. We're going to help you be successful delivering your message or in your event within that platform. But we find so often that not every event can use that same platform successfully. So we've started customizing a lot of platforms, developing them from the ground up, taking the best elements out of the ones that the clients have liked, and building an experience that really makes sense for that event. Very clean interface, very easy to navigate, not too noisy. Those are things that we really are looking at. So there's great technologies out there, but pulling them all together and making sure that the experience is great is something we really focus on.
Yeah, there really isn't kind of a one-stop shop, right?
There isn't.
And I think what I've seen from the outside is important to note that, there isn't just out of the box, you basically engage a service and suddenly you're ready to ramp it up. So even if you're, again, signing on with a company that creates a virtual event platform that's specific and has all these features, someone's still going to build it, right?
Right.
And that's, our team does that all the time, but it's another thing for event planners to consider, that they don't want to be thrown just sort of, a template that they have to build out, or a bunch of code that they have to manipulate to get exactly what they want. Let's talk tactically about, when we say interactive elements, which ties into user experience, right? What are some of the specific elements we consider? And then also, while we talk about that, where do they, how do we implement them? Where do they appear? What are the options, right? So Melissa, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about some of the other options that are out there, some of the kind of interesting tech and functionalities that you've seen.
Absolutely. So obviously the live chat, live Q&A, a lot of those options also have moderation. So the client can be in the background moderating what's being put forward to the audience, which is sometimes really important. We've also seen a lot of one-on-one video chats come through on the systems, and different tech to be able to do that in virtual reality. You're moving around a video game-esque type environment that you're creating yourself, but then your users come in and they have their avatar to be able to move around and video chat with one another.
That sort of bridges the gap with the whole kind of the networking, I guess, chasm, right? Like I think that's what everyone has been missing over the past year is how do we network? Those 10-minute coffee breaks, those lunch breaks, those were always critical in most events. So how do we use technology, knowing that everything's changed and probably isn't going to go back 100% to normal? So yeah, I think we've been hearing a lot about that, and we've been seeing that the kind of video chats are a good way to bridge that gap. You're also deep in the kind of live streaming and how the video, which is the show from my seat, because I'm a video guy, right? But there's the video, and then there's all these different elements. So we've seen different ways that you can incorporate or kind of meld both worlds. So talk a little bit about, I guess, just tactically, where does this stuff go on your page, right?
Yeah, that's a great question, because really, what's the focus of this event, right? And a lot of times, it's the message, it's the content, it's the story you're trying to tell, which is so important, right? That run of show, whether it's a live event or it's pre-recorded, is so critical to the success of retaining your audience, retaining those viewers. And so where we put these other elements, whether it's chat or it's polling or interactive features or one-on-one video messaging or chat, is critical. And so there's a couple different ways we can approach that. We can approach it by bringing those elements on top of the video, using some great tools to be able to have clickable elements on the video, or we surround the video with elements that appear or are visible during the whole event. But having that discussion up front, understanding that user experience and journey on mobile, desktop, and tablets also is a huge consideration. But we have to really be thoughtful about all those things. And that, again, is what drives us back towards customizing a lot of these things. Because we're trying to make a unique experience, we're trying to give you flexibility, and we're trying to give that user a great experience when they arrive at that site on their phones or on a desktop.
All right, so let's shift gears briefly and talk about analytics, right? So ultimately, you want to establish some sort of KPIs or something to measure against. Why are we doing all of this? Why are we incorporating all of these interactive features? So I think the question answers itself of why are analytics valuable, but let's talk about some of the ways that incorporating some of these interactive tools, can capture data and what you can then do with that data. So Melissa, what are some of the kind of most useful analytics that you've seen from a lot of the tools that we're using?
Absolutely. Some of the audience interaction tools, such as like a live chat, it'll be able to give you insight into who stayed for the whole event because they're sitting there chatting, whereas other analytics may not give you that that detailed information.
Yeah, as much as I love video analytics, it's very possible that someone just hit play and walked away, right?
Exactly.
But to have that sort of real touch point there is really important, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Engagement's key, right? So we're always monitoring what was the engagement in that video, whether it was live or on demand, how well did that video do, how many users are on, where are they in the world? Again, break it out into two things. There are live metrics and there are on-demand metrics. Both are equally as important, and both, I guarantee you, are critical to some stakeholders within your organization. And we've had a few folks come to us and say, hey, we're not worried about that. You know what? They're going to be worried about it after the event because those are the questions that their stakeholders are going to be asking, and we try and get ahead of that and say, this is really at the baseline, you're going to want this information.
You touched on a key point that we kind of started with, is that's something to talk about at the very beginning of your planning stage. Knowing what it is that you want to measure, because you don't want to be asking for stuff you didn't capture at the very end of your event, right? Last kind of topic we'll discuss here is something that's, I think, is becoming a bit more of a buzzword in the event world, but personally, it's been kind of something talked about in the broadcast and video world for a while, and that's the idea of a second screen experience. So, I mean, just from a baseline, that literally means someone's watching your event or engaging with your event on one screen. We all have 2 or 3 other screens, right? I think that's going to be way more important now that we're starting to do more hybrid events and people are going to be live and at home, right? So let's talk about, that shift to hybrid. How is interactivity and UX going to be affected, and what do we really have to consider now on that second screen experience?
Yeah, I'd love to touch on that because, first of all, every event now that we're going forward in the hybrid world, they have to be looked at so differently, right? If you're considering doing something you did in 2019 or 2018 and just saying, hey, we're going to do it similar to that, and we're going to do hybrid, you're way behind the 8 ball, right? Don't even, just think of it as we got to start fresh. Where's the audience sitting? Are they in the room? Are they at home? How are they consuming the content? What's that run of show? What's this set like? All the set designs of the past aren't going to work great for virtual. And we're really diving deep into that with clients now to try and help them think about that differently. And it's important to understand that we need to reach the folks at home. We need to reach the folks in the room. The second screen is probably the constant that will help us do that, right? For some of the interactive pieces in particular. So we really are going to focus in on making sure that that's part of every event, whether the polling comes in through there, whether the chat comes in through there, whether speaker bios are in there, whether there's one-on-one video chat in there, or opportunities to have different content come through your phone while things are happening on screen in the ballroom. Those are critical. They're going to be a lot of fun, but they're going to be really important to bridge the gap between the digital audience and the in-room audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And just ensuring that every kind of tool or piece of technology that you're investing in or investigating is mobile friendly, and I would say mobile first, right, Melissa? I mean, I think that is kind of where this is going, because you're going to assume that no matter where your audience is, they're going to have a phone in front of them. They could be at home or they could be in person. So what do you see, like, looking forward, and this can be very high level, what are some of the ways that we can kind of incorporate that second screen experience into hybrid events, as they'll probably all be in the future?
Sure. Well, you kind of touched on it. The audience at home, they want to be as involved as possible with that hybrid event because they may not be able to travel to that location. They may not feel comfortable doing so yet. And so how are we going to treat them the same as those in the ballroom or in the audience within the space? And I think that live chat, that QA, polling, breakout video sessions, things like that on that second screen, on that second device, is what's going to incorporate that at-home audience and make them feel a part of that event.
Just to kind of wrap up, I want to talk through some quick key takeaways. I think for me, it's all about preparation, right? We want clients should be thinking at the very beginning what it is that they want their users to experience throughout the event. I would say both from a content perspective, but then also from your virtual venue, right? If both of you could, give one kind of takeaway for our audience here, what would it be? I'll start with you, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I think the planning and preparation is key, right? Selecting your partner in this space is so critical early on for all the reasons we talked about, from analytics to platforms to a great run of show and the great content creation. So plan earlier than you've ever planned, right? That's a message that we really want to get out. The industry took a hit over the last 18 months. The teams aren't, the bench isn't as deep as it used to be. So that means we want to really get ahead of all your events in 2021, 2022, and even into 2023 now. We're talking about events and booking teams and venues now. So that's really important to get ahead of that, and that's all part of this discussion.
Great. Melissa, what do you got?
Yeah, I think it's important to really start out with the planning, but also know why you're doing something. Why are you bringing in a live chat? Why are you having the users use a second screen instead of putting it directly on the site, or vice versa? You're hoping everyone puts their phone down for a few minutes. Yeah, so I think that that's important to the client to really understand why they're doing something and make sure that they think things through so that they don't come to the end of the event and say, oh, it would have been nice to know how many people watched this for those analytics or things of that nature.
A lot to think about, a lot of changes, all for the better. Very exciting times. So, Mike, Melissa, thanks so much for joining me. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.